We have lots of news and rumors to discuss in today's video. In today's NHL trade rumor mill, we're looking at teams like the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Los Angeles Kings, and the Vancouver Canucks, as well as some trade talk around Patrik Laine and Trevor Zegras. We have another update on top Habs prospect Ivan Demidov, and some major signings around the NHL, including a whopper with Travis Konecny and the Flyers. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to talk about here today. Let's kick things off with our new signings of the day. We'll start things off here with our biggest one. Pretty big whopper of a deal between the Philadelphia Flyers and one of their top players in Travis Konecny. Now, we knew Konecny was obviously eligible for an extension. There was some, rumors that he may end up getting traded and not end up extending. I knew there was definitely interest on his part to sign in Philly. All indications were he was quite happy there. There was no issues that way. But the big question amongst a lot of reporters and fans was whether or not Travis Konecny kind of fit the rebuilding Flyers. Obviously, he's a good player, sure, but he's a little bit older. If it's signing on a 7-8 year deal, is that going to mesh with a lot of the young talent coming into the lineup? And well, I guess the moral of the story is the Flyers feel like the answer to that is yes. And clearly, this is a big deal. They've signed an 8-year contract extension, $70 million total value, $8.75 million on the average annual value for the salary cap hit. Now, within this contract, there's also plenty of signing bonus money and lots of trade protection. For the first 6 years of the 8-year deal, he gets a full no-move clause. And then in years 7 and 8, it goes from a full no-move down to a modified no-trade. So there's a number of teams that he's allowed to obviously block a trade from. I don't have the confirmed number of teams that he's able to block. Usually for a player of that magnitude, it's at least 10 to 15, something in that range. So obviously that's a lot of money. There was some speculation that his next contract that he was looking for upwards of $10 million. A lot of people thought that was too much, and clearly that's not what they gave him. So I don't know if this is really a case of him really wanting $10 million. So it's hard to say if that rumor had any validity to it or not, but it was out there for sure. The other thing about this news that was kind of unique is the news was actually broke by his teammate Travis Sanheim, who is now apparently one of the top insiders. He beat all of the top, respected inside NHL reporters, Elliot Friedman, Chris Johnson, Frank Cervelli. Like he had them all beat. Even the local Flyers beat, like the Anthony Sanfilippo. He's usually pretty good with Flyer stuff. Sanheim had them all. Sanheim broke the news on Twitter that he had it from a good source who was Konecny himself, that he was going to be extending a long-term deal in Philly, and it was very close to being finalized. And then not long after, the team put out the release indicating that the news was official and that he was signed. So here we are. I mean, you could make an argument that some people think it's too much money. Obviously he's a good player, but is it too much? It's debatable. The problem, I guess, the only issue I have when you look at their cap situation and the players that they have signed long term is, at this point in the rebuild, they have some really good pieces. They need to keep some veterans around. You could argue Konecny is, a good leader. Probably, has potential to be a future captain there, depending on how long Couturier sticks around. Plays hard, gets along well with the coach. There's lots to like about his game. But if you look at all the players they have locked up, ideally you'd want to see like an up-and-coming top defenseman get a long-term deal. You want to see like an up-and-coming goaltender, top young centerman. They don't have those pieces. I mean, so there's still lots that are coming. Mitchkov's going to be an exciting piece this year, etc. So, at the end of the day, it's it might be a little bit rich, but time will tell. He's got back-to-back 30-goal seasons, so we'll see how far Konecny can elevate his game to see if his contract ages well or not. So let me know what your thoughts are on this extension. I'm of the mind here that it's maybe a little bit too much, but he could still continue to get better, and he could still maybe hasn't hit his full ceiling, and if that's the case, it'll age well, especially with the cap increasing now, hopefully for a consistent number of years. So we'll see where it goes, but definitely a huge piece of news in Philly today. The Islanders today avoided salary arbitration and signed former first-round pick Oliver Wahlstrom to a one-year contract, and he gets a one-year deal at $1 million, which is a small bump above what his qualifying offer was. And to be honest, he didn't really completely earn that bump. This is, I think, a little bit of a, I don't know, show of faith, if you will, from the Islanders and Lamoriello, that they're trying to, give him a little incentive here to be more consistent and to elevate his game this year. Prior to the signing, if you look at the new cap management sites like Puckpedia and Cap Wages and all those guys, they had them showing the Islanders with about $50,000 in available space. So obviously that would put them about $950 over the cap now with $1 million signing. Of course, there's not a given that Wahlstrom makes the roster out of training camp, but for cap purposes right now, for example, they signed a Russian free agent, Siplikov. Theoretically, he could be, on paper at least, put in the minors. I know Lou Lamoriello said that they didn't sign him with the intention of playing him in Bridgeport, and maybe they won't, but for cap purposes right now, he doesn't have to be on the NHL roster. So, because you'd have to drop somebody to their AHL team of at least a $950 contract. Now, the good news is with this Wahlstrom deal, there's still a lot of talk that he could be traded. They've avoided arbitration, so they can do that. Obviously, avoiding arbitration and completing their RFA business that are in arbitration, they can get a buyout window as well. So we'll have to see if there's any plans that way for the Islanders. That could also be coming. You never know, but we don't have any firm rumors to suggest for sure that Islanders will use the buyout, but they'll have an option here. And secondly, with Wahlstrom, like, he may not be there long, but if he does stay and he's not playing to the level of satisfaction for the team, they'll be able to demote him and get full cap relief, because you can bury up to $1.1 million and change. So at least it's not big enough contract you have to worry that way. Now, the Islanders today also confirmed, actually it was late yesterday after I put up my video with all my news items yesterday, that defenseman Dennis Cholowski has re-signed as well. He gets a one-year, two-way deal. That's certainly good news to make sure there's better depth and a little bit more of a veteran presence at the Bridgeport level in the American Hockey League. And he obviously is a call-up option, should be, but he's not going to be on the NHL roster to start the season. A few other signings around the league today as well. We had the Pittsburgh Penguins signed 2023 first-round pick Braden Yager. A little surprised it took this long, but they did sign him here. The 14th overall pick last year. The 19-year-old had a career season so far, putting up his best numbers yet in junior and Western Hockey League for the Moose Jaw Warriors, having a 95-point campaign. Certainly had a real good season overall, regular season and playoffs, represented Canada at the World Juniors. So, obviously just a real good campaign for Yager and good development. So certainly earned that contract. I'm honestly a little bit surprised it didn't come a little bit sooner. The San Jose Sharks also confirmed that they've re-signed 22-year-old Thomas Bordelot, who still remains a good prospect for them. We'll see. I know at this point it's fair to say that his development hasn't probably quite come along as quickly as they were hoping, but he's still young enough that there's still hope. They still believe in him. But he signs a one-year deal, basically equivalent to what his qualifying offer was, $874,000. Another prospect signing as well in Los Angeles, one of the top goalies in the 2024 NHL draft class and second-round pick for the Kings, Carter George, gets a 3-year entry-level contract. He was one of the more interesting goalies taken in this year's draft. This past year, amongst all the North American major junior leagues, so the 3 junior leagues in Canada, and I believe that also covers the USHL as well in the States, he, more than any other goalie in the all those leagues combined, faced more shots. So he had more rubber shot on him than anybody else, and he had a pretty good save percentage in doing so. So obviously not such a great stat for his team in Owen Sound, but the Owen Sound attack certainly relied on George heavily last year, and he came up big. Obviously, it was huge for the Team Canada U18 team as well. So of course he's got a good in there to Canada program. So we'll see what the future holds for George, but he looks like a real good goalie prospect there for Los Angeles. A couple other quick signings as well. Will Butcher, been bouncing around the NHL in various capacities for a few years now, has left the NHL and signed a one-year deal in the KHL. So Will Butcher, for the most part, after coming out of college and into the NHL, had a few years of steady NHL time, and since then he's been more on two-way deals, bouncing up and down, more AHL time, and had an opportunity to go to the KHL, probably earn a little bit more money. So he heads over there. And the Dallas Stars, their first-round pick, Emil Hemming, has been confirmed that he will be making the jump to North America and playing Canadian Major Junior Hockey next year. He has signed his contract with the OHL's Barrie Colts after being picked up there on the import draft. So he will be playing in the OHL next year. Now, one other rumor that's been floating around here the last few days is the future of former Capitals and Canes forward Evgeny Kuznetsov, who was eventually had a contract terminated with Carolina after the player and team mutually agreed to tear up the contract, to put himself on unconditional waivers for termination purposes, and that's been done. So he's a free agent right now. Their original rumor right off the get-go was that he was going to the KHL. Yesterday we had heard, well, not so fast, pump the brakes. There might be a chance he stays and signs in the NHL. There was through reports to his agent that there was as many as 15 different NHL clubs that reached out to express various levels of interest, at least have a conversation after the contract became terminated and he was officially free agent and able to speak to other teams. But now today's reports say that, you know what, so far nothing really seems to be changing amongst all those reports, that he's still very, very likely. The most likely scenario with Kuznetsov is he is going to be heading to the KHL and signing a 4-year contract. I don't see any of the NHL clubs that were expressing interest willing to give him any kind of term. At best, he was going to get a 1-year deal. Probably not much more than league minimum, maybe 1 point something million. It would be a smaller number for sure. And, probably have to take a small role within the team as well. And, well, obviously, so far it doesn't look like that's going to materialize. And KHL is going to be the more likely destination there for Kuznetsov. Now, speaking of Kuznetsov and the KHL, he may end up being teammates if he signs with the Habs prospect Ivan Demidov. We've talked about the connection there on a few different occasions. Will there be the opportunity for Demidov to play with a guy like Kuznetsov, which could be huge for his development? And there were some wondering if Kuznetsov does sign with the same team as Demidov in the KHL, which is expected, could that impact Demidov's roster spot? And will he maybe not make the top club there? Obviously, not really sure. It's really to his benefit to play in the lower level Russian league, the MHL again. And would he maybe make the jump to North America early? That's been a lot of the chatter here as of late. But everything that we've seen and learned today, it sounds like Demidov is definitely planning to play in the KHL. With SKA St. Petersburg, which is where Kuznetsov, I believe, is expected to sign. And at this point, we learned that Habs management and the coaching management from the KHL club have actually had an extensive, lengthy meeting discussing Demidov and the plans for his development in his future. And right now, it looks like he's playing in Russia this year. I don't think there's any chance as of right now anymore. Like I said, there was some rumors in the last couple of days, but I think we've learned enough now that those are kind of not happening. And that the best case scenario for Habs fans who want to see Demidov is that once the KHL season wraps up, it is possible that maybe at the end of the year he signs, burns a year of his ELC, and maybe plays a handful of games with the Habs at the end of the season. That's a possibility, depending on how everything lines up, depending on his health and exactly the season, ending and all that. So we'll see. But expectations are Demidov will play in the KHL this year, possibly be full-time in the NHL next year, which will be 25-26. So we'll see. That's where things stand today. And the rumor front, Vancouver Canucks, I want to talk about them a little bit further. There was some things that popped up in the rumor mill after they announced the signing of forward Daniel Sprong. Of course, that kind of created a little bit of a logjam in the forward group and some questions about what it might mean for some other players that are younger and, not a given to be on the roster. And especially Vasily Podkolzin, and to some degree Nils Höglander. Höglander, I think, is a little bit safer, but a different Vancouver media talked about both players, actually. The Province had an article from Patrick Johnson talking about the fact that he feels that there's maybe a possibility that Vasily Podkolzin will be expendable now. It's far from a guarantee that he was going to make the lineup and be on the NHL roster to start the season even before Sprong signed. Now you throw another established NHLer. Even though he's bounced around a lot, he's been a pretty, consistent NHL player in the last number of years. The only thing I can kind of see is the knock on Sprong is defensively he's not real good. I've heard some rumblings which cannot be confirmed. I've seen some people say there's some talk about the fact that maybe in the room off the ice that he's had trouble meshing with teams, maybe not the greatest in the room. I don't know. I haven't really seen anything I can say that's confirmed, but there is some rumors out there about that. But you got to wonder why he's bounced around so much, right? Is because he continues to produce. So why wouldn't a team want to keep him? It does seem weird. But all that said, Podkolzin is the most obvious player that might kind of really be pushed out. I mean, like I said, it was already questionable before if he would make it. Now it's even less likely. He's only going to want to play in the minors so much for so long before he's like, okay, can I get a chance somewhere else? So there is some talk about from PJ in the province there about that's a possibility. And the other Vancouver media, the Scaris and Price podcast, was talking about they're kind of musing over the idea of would Nils Hoglander maybe be expendable or could he be traded now? I think the answer to that is no. To be honest, I think Hoglander has been a lot more consistent, a lot more dependable. He's played a decent amount with Pettersson. Doesn't mean for sure he will next year. He'll get some competition from Sprong, but I don't see them moving Hoglander. The thing about Hoglander was, could they get maybe like a more upgrade their D and get an upgrade in the top four by moving him? And you know what? Maybe like if you're able to get a top defenseman, I guess I wouldn't completely be opposed if I'm Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford do, including him. I just don't think that they're going to be actively looking to move him. They don't really have a burning desire there, I don't think. But like I said, if an offer came along for a top pair or a top four defenseman that you really liked, and that you thought was going to upgrade the team and it was going to make the team better, I would be willing to listen on him for sure. But Podkolzin to me is the more likely that would get moved sooner. I don't know that that's going to be a pressing move we see in the offseason here. It might. It wouldn't be shocking at all if it did. But if it doesn't happen, I can see it being something that maybe as training camps get underway and rosters start to get trimmed, that maybe that's a time that this is more likely to see that happen. Another player as well to keep an eye on as well in Pittsburgh. No, we talked about Nick Robertson maybe being a target for Kyle Dubas in Pittsburgh. We know they want to add some more youth. We know they want to add some more scoring. And we know Nick Robertson is not thrilled to be in Toronto, has requested a trade. Now, we also know that the Leafs don't seem to be the most ready and willing to jump at honoring that, and that maybe they try to talk him into staying. That's a possibility. Because if they do move him, they're going to have to get, at this point, there looks to be a path for him to play more this year. So it might not be in his best interest to get moved anyways, depending on where he goes, of course. But another target, I was looking at the article, again, there's multiple talks about Pittsburgh from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We're talking about Robertson, and also made another suggestion, and that's Arthur Kaliev out of Los Angeles. Now, he's a similar predicament, younger player, highly drafted player, first couple rounds of the draft, came with a goal scoring ability, scored 50 goals in the OHL his draft year, a good shot. Kind of at one point was kind of played his way into favor with the organization, then he kind of played his way out of it, and it kind of seems like now he's a guy that's kind of looking for a fresh start. There was a lot of speculation that he was definitely going to get moved this offseason, and it has yet to happen. The connection to the Sens was because of from his time in junior playing with Hamilton. It's obviously a player that Steve Staios would know. But again, if he doesn't see the fit with the Sens, whatever, just because he knows the player and had a connection to him doesn't mean they're going to trade him. But I know some prominent LA media had suggested that trade was very likely to happen, and it didn't. Doesn't mean it actually won't, but hasn't happened yet. So Kaliev is definitely available. There's no doubt. And Pittsburgh, for a team, like I said, who wants to get younger, wants to get more scoring, wants to try to find some youth to join the team that maybe isn't going to break the bank, he would be another target as well, like Robertson. That would make a lot of sense for Dubas to target. So again, would not be shocked if we've seen that happen. It also references maybe Patrick Laine being an option for Pittsburgh. I'm not so sure that the Penguins have the assets, though, that the Jackets are going to want. I've seen some other speculation about Trevor Zegras for Patrik Laine too. Now, again, I don't think that would be a one-for-one deal. I believe it was ESPN that first floated that idea. I don't know if they had any intel suggesting that that was actually, being discussed, or rumors connecting the dots here. But, the way Zegras has played the past couple of years, I understand Anaheim's desire to have a different type of player. I understand their desire to maybe change the mix there a little bit and move him. Same thing goes for Laine. I just don't know that it's the perfect fit for both clubs. But I do understand the fact from Verbeek's standpoint in Anaheim why he might like Laine better. Laine is a much bigger player. Mind you, he's not really known as being a physical guy, but he is huge. He's 6'4", well over 200 pounds. So the size and the strength is there. He's got a wicked shot. Could he benefit from playing with some talented centers like a Leo Carlsson or Mason McTavish? Yeah, I see the fit. I can see Laine excelling in a top six role with the Ducks. That might actually be a terrific landing spot for Laine, I have no doubt. I just don't know that they're going to want to include Trevor Zegras for that. Now, we know that Zegras is 100% available. I have no doubt about that. It's been rumored and talked about enough that I think it's fair to say that Pat Verbeek and the organization wants Zegras to change his style of play, wants to see a different player, wants to see new elements added to his game, because I don't think they're, as much as they see his talent and the ability to produce, I don't think they're in love with how he plays at all. So, they're trying to build a big physical team that's hard to play against while scoring lots of goals. And, with Leo Carlsson, I think you're going to get over time, he's going to develop into a real nice two-way player. Mason McTavish is just an absolute beast. He's a huge guy that's big and strong and can be a power forward centerman. And then, of course, they add Cutter Gauthier to the mix. He's got the size there as well. And they get some other players that, kind of feed into the style a little bit better that they want to build. And so I understand the whole thing around Zegras. But if Columbus and the Ducks hooked up on a deal and these players were involved, I just don't know that it would be a one-for-one. Especially if the Jackets, Zegras might be a good fit with Kent Johnson. They do play a similar style of game as well. But again, the Jackets would have the skill, but then I don't know how Don Waddell feels about all that. I just don't know that, looking at the last couple of years of production, Laine has had his struggles in Columbus, where Zegras, you could make all the arguments about Verbeek and all the things, but his asking price has been high. I don't know that Laine is going to be what he wants. So it's a very interesting concept. I've seen the idea floated by multiple outlets. Like I said, I believe it started with ESPN. Might have been John Buccigross, maybe. I can't remember who it was. Somebody floated out the idea, and I've seen other outlets kind of run with the idea. And it to some degree, it makes some sense. To me, if it happened, would not be one for one. I think there would have to be more on Columbus' side than Laine. Obviously, Columbus is going to be saying, at the same time, though, if you want us to keep half the salary, you're going to have to give us something good, and Zegras could be the piece. But again, I just don't see it being one for one. But let me know what you think. Would Laine be a good fit in the Anaheim Ducks system in the top six there? Do you see Laine playing a better style of game than Trevor Zegras with the Ducks and what Verbeek's trying to build? I'm not completely sold on the idea of being a better fit there. But I do like the concept of Laine playing with some of those really skilled centermen that they have and other wingers that they have between Gauthier, McTavish, Carlsson. Laine could find that goal-scoring ability again. I don't know that Zegras is the answer on the other side. But let me know what you think in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.